Hello and welcome to Zoo Access for All Developmental Disabilities Training at the Cincinnati Zoo and Botanical Garden. This is Level 1 training for all employees and volunteers who interact with our visitors. During this training, you will hear from Rhiannon Howweller, the VP of Visitor Experience, Strategy and Fun, on the creation and growth of the Zoo Access for All program. You will see a video from our Family Advisory Council and a video on our current resources for visitors with developmental disabilities. Then, Dr. Jen Smith of Children's Hospital and the LEND program will give you an introduction to working with visitors with developmental disabilities. At the end, you will have the opportunity to practice some scenarios with your team as examples of what you may experience at the zoo. Thank you for being here, and we hope you learn more about our program and the visitors here.
Hi, I'm Rhiannon Howweller. I'm the VP of Visitor Experience Strategy and Fun here at the Cincinnati Zoo. And I just wanted to give you a little bit of background on Zoo Access for All. It's won an award in its very first year, so everybody who's been here with us for at least a year should be really proud of the work that we put in. We won the Climb Award for inclusion. It was its first year, its inaugural year, and also the first year of our program. So everyone should be super proud of what we've accomplished so far, and I'm excited for what the future holds. So Zoo Access for All is a program we launched in October of 2017. It was a labor of love for 2 years, or maybe a year, trying to figure out where we were heading. But it's essentially an opportunity. We've grown from 900,000 people visiting our park to 1.7 or 1.8 million. But what are the communities that we're not reaching? So it was an opportunity to reach out to the communities that we currently weren't touching. So we launched with 3 sort of basic platforms. One was related to the socioeconomic side, so providing deep discounts for tickets and memberships for our community. The second piece was English as a second language. How are we reaching the people who maybe don't speak English as their first language? And we're still working on sort of formulating that pillar a little bit more. And then the third component is related to the developmental disability community. So we're in partnership with Children's Hospital. We are funded by an IMLS grant, and we're in year 2 of 3. As a lot of you probably are aware, the demographics are changing not only in our country but in our community, and we need to remain relevant into the future. So how do we stay sustainable long term? And how do we invite others into our community? My goal eventually is to have a place where every single person in our community gets the opportunity to at least visit our zoo once. We're a piece of the fabric of this community, and it should be a piece of what everybody experiences here in Cincinnati. I do want everybody to get the opportunity to come here, and then once they're here, we need to be wowing them with our messaging, with our Wild Encounters team, with our visitor experience team, with our animal team. Everybody needs to be in on that, and we need to create a space that's welcoming, warm, and inspiring for everybody in Cincinnati. And then I think big picture, I also want us to be collaborating with us whole city. We'll rise up together. We'll be a better community together if we're all working together for the betterment of everybody, all the people that live in this community. So.
The motto of our Family Advisory Council is "Nothing about us without us." The zoo has invited 20 families with various developmental disabilities to be our sounding board for Zoo Access for All. These families have committed to the zoo and will help us to succeed.
Hi, I'm Laura Palmer, a member of the Family Advisory Council for the zoo.
Hi, we're the Shear family. I'm Josh Shear. This is
Ryan, Ed,
What's your name?
even May.
Hi, my name is Chris Mills.
Hi, we are the Rouches.
I'm Nella.
You're Nora.
I'm Cassandra. This is Troy.
Hi, my name is Laurie and I'm on the Family Advisory Council at the zoo.
Hi everyone, I'm Nicole and this is Kate.
Here's Nolan. He's just swinging a little bit before school.
I'm Michael.
I'm Clinton. I'm Angie.
And this is our daughter, Amelia.
Hi, my name is Tyler and I'm 19.
Hi, we're the Kobolds.
Hi, my name is Nico, and I love penguins.
My favorite animal is the giraffe right here.
Giovanni loves the manatees at the zoo, particularly sitting in the bubble looking at the manatees.
I get elephants.
You like the elephants? Should we go see the elephants?
Yes.
Our favorite animals include the otters, obviously Fiona, and the manatees.
Well, I think his favorite animal to visit is whichever one is closest to him.
He loves John the lion at the Cincinnati Zoo.
What's your favorite animal?
Yes.
I like to hang out with Mumbo.
Troy loves riding the train. He also loves anything with water, so he'll hang out at Swan Lake, or he'll go to the elephants when they're getting hosed down. He loves that.
He likes to follow the flamingos from the parade back into their habitat, which is another favorite thing to do. Yes.
The elephant. Can you do an elephant? Elephant. Good job. Ooh, is that tiger? Tiger.
My favorite exhibit that they have is night hunters.
I like cheetahs and owls and eagles.
As you can tell, Amelia likes to play in the dirt and gets messy. She also loves dance, horseback riding. She loves to swim and paint.
The Shear family loves to go hiking. We love to go camping. We love to cheer on the Redlegs. And of course, spend the day at the zoo.
I like sports and I like Fortnite. And my favorite animal at the zoo is the gorilla.
Boys, what do you say about your sister? She's cute. She's cute. And she's loud.
I like Wyatt as a brother because he's always so happy and cheers me on all the time.
Do you like going to the zoo?
Oh yeah. I like to see the penguins. And my two favorite rides is the carousel with the tree.
We love to walk around. That's probably their favorite thing to do, is just walk around and look at stuff.
My family has gone to the zoo when I was little. I also did zoo camp. We saw all the animals in there, so it was great.
He does not enjoy the train, so we avoid the train, don't we?
He also likes quiet places, so we'll be hanging out at the Red Panda exhibit. We'll be at the Peace Garden. Sometimes we go to the Passenger Pigeon Memorial. That's a quiet place to be.
I think the zoo is great because I've been going for over 17 years.
Now that they're getting a little older, they love to ride the train and go to the playground. We definitely love eating pretzels. That's number one, probably.
Giovanni is nonverbal, but he does love the zoo because he doesn't cry when we pull in the parking lot. That's how we know he loves it. So,
To spend the day, or just to spend a couple hours after a doctor's appointment at Children's, the Cincinnati Zoo is one of our favorite places in the world.
The Festival of Lights is the best time of the year because it looks beautiful and it's good to go at night.
He doesn't necessarily understand a lot of verbal language, so if you tell him to look at something and it's far away, he may or may not follow the point or be able to realize what you want him to look at.
We love the zoo, and a great day at the zoo for us is making sure that we have plenty of places for Wyatt to rest because he gets tired walking long distances, and always having chicken fries for lunch.
When you see us at the zoo, you'll probably see Amelia riding in this. It's because she uses this to give herself a feeling of comfort and a feeling of guidance, knowing where she's going from place to place.
Something that makes our day at the zoo is recognition. It's cool when, people are nice to him or recognize him, just say hi or give a high five. So that's something cool that staff could do to just make people feel welcome at the zoo.
Bird. Kate talks using sign language.
One thing that would be really helpful for Nolan at the zoo is he likes the animal encounters, like to touch animals and that kind of thing. Oftentimes when we go, he'll be in the stroller, and so bringing an animal to him to touch would be super helpful, or hand-over-hand support.
We are really appreciative of everything that you're doing to make the zoo more inclusive for our buddy Giovanni.
Do you love the zoo?
I like it.
Cincinnati Zoo!
Hi, I'm Morgan from the Cincinnati Zoo and Botanical Garden, and I'm here today to talk about some of the resources that are available for our guests with developmental disabilities through our Zoo's Access for All program.
Many of our resources are available to you online before you visit. On the Zoo Access for All page, you will find the links to the following. A sensory map, which indicates areas around the zoo that may be difficult for those with sensory processing disorders because of the sounds, smells, lighting, and crowds. The adventure planning map, and choice cards to help you plan your visit and make your visual schedule. Social narratives, ongoing to the zoo, and experiencing our cheetah encounter or Blakely's Barnyard Bonanza. Visual supports to help our visitors understand zoo rules, how to touch animals, how to feed giraffes, and checklists to assist in arriving at or leaving the zoo.
When you arrive at the zoo, you can talk to one of our visitor experience employees, or you can visit the Welcome Center to see some of our on-site resources available to you. At the Welcome Center, you can pick up a sensory map, or you can rent a sensory bag.
The sensory bag is free to rent and includes items like noise-canceling headphones, a fidget, sunglasses, scratch and sniff stickers, chewy tubes, and pinwheels to help support calm breathing. We also have 4 sensory-friendly family restrooms around the zoo, which all have manual flush and paper towels. These are located in Safari, by La Rosa's, and 2 by the Welcome Center. The 2 sensory-friendly bathrooms in the Welcome Center also have 2 adult-sized changing tables available. If you are interested in riding the train or the carousel, but are unable to wait in a traditional line, speak to an employee about using a Rides Access Pass. The Rides Access Pass allows you to wait the time, but not in line, for the comfort of our visitors with developmental disabilities.
Our greatest resources, however, are our trained staff members.
Ongoing training for our employees and volunteers gives us the knowledge and the confidence to assist any visitor here in the zoo with any need. With the help of our team, we are more inclusive, accessible, and ready to inspire every visitor with wildlife every day.
So, like Rhiannon said, I work over at Children's Hospital, and I'm a psychologist, and I work with kids with developmental disabilities. And I am going to try to cram as much information about developmental disabilities as I can within the next hour or so. And then we also have some scenarios that the teams have provided to us with examples of situations that have been faced throughout the zoo with our families. And so what we hope is that you'll get some more information today, have an opportunity to talk with your team that you work with, as well as some of your supervisors who are here, and with my expertise from the disability side. So coming together to be able to help you guys have some better ideas of things that you can do when you face these difficult situations within the park. So first thing that I want to ask is, anybody a family member of anyone with a developmental disability? Okay. How about, does anybody just know somebody personally with a developmental disability? Yeah. So you can see by the show of hands that our population is very, very prevalent, and these are kids and families that you are already interacting with. I know that you are because of some of the stories, and what I will say too from our standpoint is that the zoo is a beloved place in Cincinnati. When we started doing our research on this, we actually couldn't find any families to participate in the Family Advisory Council because who hadn't been to the zoo with their child. So this is something that we are doing in order to make it a better experience. It's not that you guys are doing anything wrong. This is more just to help you guys feel more comfortable in your interactions. Because about 15% of the population of kids in the United States have some type of developmental disability. And we are seeing more and more of these kids as well. And when you look at the total numbers, that's nearly 10 million kids. So I am really bad at math, but I think we started to look at some of that, and you will see thousands of families who come through your doors who have kids with developmental disabilities. And what we are really trying to encourage is just their community participation, because a lot of people don't understand disability. They don't understand how to help our population. There's also certain lack of knowledge on what to do. And then I think the biggest thing that comes into play is expectations and attitudes. And one of the things that we really strive for these types of talks that we do is trying to make sure that we can change some attitudes, but it's not to make you guys feel uncomfortable, and it's not to make you feel guilty or feel like you've made a ton of mistakes. I will say that I work with this population every day and have done so for 20 years, and I still make all of these mistakes on a daily basis. So nobody is perfect at this, but what we want is for you guys to just feel more comfortable, and the goal of us talking about it is to change your way of thinking and change your way of interacting. So that way you know and you feel more prepared when you come across one of our families. And I get a little bit on a soapbox when it comes to this particular word. So we refer to it as the R word. I can't even say the word out loud because it bothers me so much. But the terminology that we used to use was mental retardation. And you probably have heard a lot of people use that as a slang term, as a derogatory term to like make fun of somebody. And there's actually a wonderful campaign that is out there called Spread the Word to End the Word that was started by Special Olympics. And I just wanted to let you guys know about that because words really do matter. And one of the things that we're really trying to emphasize for you guys is how to use people first language. And so there is certain terminology that we use within our field that is much more acceptable than others. So we have a handout that Laura is going to hand out to everybody that has the top tips for how to communicate with and about individuals with developmental disabilities. But the big thing that I want you guys to think about is how we emphasize the person first. So it's not something that is the disability that comes first. It is something that disability is just a part of them. And I have a nice video that I think describes some of the things that we really emphasize when trying to interact with our population. So I'm going to see, hopefully technology works out for us here.
Good morning, Bob.
Morning there, big man.
Morning, Alice!
There's no need to be awkward. Poor Bob. Like so many of us, he just doesn't know how to interact with people with disabilities.
It's pretty easy, really. People with disabilities are people first.
We need the same things that every person needs, like respect.
Good morning, everyone.
Attention!
Okay. Maybe we need to be more specific.
The easiest way to show respect is to focus on the person, not the disability. It's okay. You'll get the hang of it.
One easy way to focus on the person is to watch the person signing and not their interpreter.
Or their companion.
It's really cool that you'd like to help, but do us both a favor and please ask me first. What you think might be helping?
I got you.
Wait, ah! Oh no, might actually not.
If you'd like to offer me help, let me hold on to your elbow. Don't take mine.
Hey, would you like to take my arm?
Sure.
Assistive devices help us to live our lives. They're really important and really personal.
Grabbing them only makes it weird for everyone.
What? Please only touch our devices and service animals if we've given you permission. And don't take it personally if I ask you not to. Remember that my service animal helps me all the time. Neither of us would like it if we were separated.
Remember, we make our own decisions. We sign documents, vote, volunteer, work, and pay taxes.
We get married.
So don't underestimate me just because I have a great smile.
Just because I'm blind.
May I help you?
Does not mean I'm deaf.
Just because I'm deaf doesn't mean I'm blind.
And just because I use a wheelchair doesn't mean that I can't sweep you off your feet.
So take a deep breath. Relax. We don't bite.
Unless we're really hungry.
Hello there, ladies. How are you?
Hello. And if you're not sure what to do, just ask.
Hi, would you still like to see a menu?
No thanks, but can you please read it to me?
Sure, definitely.
Just treat us the way you would want to be treated, and we'll all be okay.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, Alice.
Morning.
Awkward no more. Nice job, Bob. Go forth and be human.
There's no need to be awkward.
All right, so one of the reasons why we like to show that particular video is to show that you guys are already better than Bob. So you guys are already treating people with dignity and respect, and the part that we are going to be working on is just how to make that a little bit better and to help you feel a little more comfortable, because I think something that happens is that people don't know what to say in certain situations. And when you don't know what to say, sometimes you don't say anything. And then that leaves us kind of looking and staring and not really knowing how to interact. So we're just trying to provide you guys with some other things to say. So the things that I want to emphasize with the people first language is just some examples of how we would say maybe the person with autism or the person with a developmental disability. We wouldn't say the autistic person or the disabled person. And this is different language than you might have heard before. But what we want to emphasize is that the person comes first, the disability is a distant, just part of their person. So just really emphasizing that can make a big difference. We put together some of these things about what we encourage people to say, and I would imagine you guys are already doing this. But to just say hello and to say hi, one of the things that we encourage people to do is to just talk about something that you see the child wearing. So you can say, I like your, Fiona t-shirt. Your Star Wars hat is really cool. And one of the things that we get asked a lot is, how do we help? If we see somebody who is really struggling, how do you help somebody? And what we have found out from all of our families that we have asked is that they want to be asked. And so it is just something as simple as, can I help? Or how can I help? Or would you like help? And it might not be anything to do with the child with the developmental disability. It might be something else. It might be that you are asking them if you can hold the door for them, or if you can carry something for them, or if you can get them a drink of water, if you can help with the other child, whatever it may be. But go ahead and put it out there that you are there to support, but don't assume that you know the support that they need. The other thing is to just ask, common questions, just like you would any other child that you come into contact with within the park. It's okay to talk to them and to ask questions, just like you would anybody else. And then the other thing that gets brought up a lot is what to do if you don't understand something that somebody says. And it's okay to say that and to say, I'm sorry, I didn't get that. Can you repeat that? And it's okay to do that a couple of times, even though we might feel a little awkward, and then you can go to whoever the individual is with and maybe say, sorry, I still didn't get that. I'm going to ask your mom, dad, whoever they're with, for some more help. So really thinking about the perspective of just good customer service, using a normal tone of voice. One of my favorite parts of that video is the person screaming, thinking that that is going to help the person understand. Also, speaking directly to the person with the developmental disability is very important. So they might not respond, and that is okay. But we want to give them that courtesy, just like you would be talking to another child, that you would talk to them first. You wouldn't just go to their parents and assume that they don't understand. So talking to them first, instead of talking about them, and then just using as simple language as possible, and we'll talk about this with some of the communication pieces in just a second as well. Some of the things to do, I actually changed this since the last training that I gave, because I had on here follow the golden rule, of treating people how you would want to be treated, and that's actually not accurate. It's treating people how they want to be treated. So really thinking about that from their own perspective, and just remembering that they're people first. And one of the things that we hear from parents of adult kids is treating adults with disabilities like adults, not that they are just larger kids. So really thinking about them with the respect that you would offer somebody else. And I think it's okay to repeat and rephrase something. I have learned this over the years, that just because you say the same thing over and over again doesn't mean that they're going to understand it. You kind of have to think of a different way to say it. And then being okay with giving people the time and space that they might need. It's not that our people don't understand or can't get there. It might be that they just need a little more extra time to process and to think about things. And I think one of the big things that I am so excited about this group, because I see so many new faces, is that you guys can each be disability champions. That you can say, yes, I either work or volunteer at the Cincinnati Zoo, and we're doing this awesome thing where we're working with people with developmental disabilities, and you can be an example and kind of lead by example in doing that. Because that's how this is going to spread. And I really am so thankful for the leadership that the zoo has shown from the top, because they have really modeled this, and I think it's just going to continue with everybody that works here. The other thing that really comes into play here is we're all going to make mistakes. And like I said, I make mistakes literally every day working with our population, and I'll just have to say, gosh, I really screwed that up. I said the wrong thing. I did the wrong thing. How can I make that better? And we really have to think about asking. And so if we're not sure how to do something, it's okay to ask. Don't assume that you really know. And it's okay to follow the family's lead. And so sometimes that is just, kind of stepping back and just seeing what the family is doing, especially when it comes to behavior, because that's something that I think gets brought up a lot, is that people feel weird about jumping in, like if there's something like behaviorally going on with a kid. And we don't expect you to jump in there and to save the day when a kid is having a behavioral episode. What we want you guys to do is just kind of have that customer experience of just being friendly, saying hello, including them in the interactions. Smiling goes a long way. So even if you are so uncomfortable and have no idea what to say, a big smile will say it all. And so just kind of staying back and doing that and listening. That can go a long way as well, to not jump in and start to talk over people as well. So then we put on here some of the not to-dos, just because some of these are helpful. I love that you're shaking your head because you're like, what in the world? Like, who would do this? But these are all things that I got from friends of mine who have disabilities, and having their stuff leaned on, so their wheelchair, the one in the video where the person took the mobility device and used it to try to swat at the insect. That's classic. I think another one that we can get into when we're trying to be cool is pretending like we know what somebody is saying. It's okay to ask. and say that you don't know. The one about just because somebody is deaf doesn't mean that they are blind, and vice versa. So the same thing with having a disability doesn't mean that cognitively they don't understand what is happening. Don't just assume that somebody needs help without asking them. And then these are some of my favorites too, and you're really going to shake your head. Yeah, there she goes. She's shaking her head. She can't believe some of these things are being said to people, but it really is true that I gathered these from our Family Advisory Council, from our families who have been told these things or asked these things, like what is wrong with him or what is wrong with her. I have adult friends who will be asked, who are you here with? Because God forbid they are somewhere independently by themselves. The other one that we hear a lot is you're such an inspiration, you're so brave. And we hear that when people are just kind of doing their own thing and like going to the grocery store and getting milk, like you are such an inspiration. And they're like, no, I am just going to get milk like everybody else is, on a daily basis. We have families that will say, he or she doesn't look disabled to me. Oh, he's really cute, even though he has a disability. You are a saint for being a mom of a kid with a disability. One of my favorites is, can I pray for you or your child? Or can I pray for your child's disability? Then some other ones, I know how you feel. Why is he or she not doing something? Why are you doing that for them? Why are they acting that way? I don't know how you do it. It must be so hard. It must be so exhausting. And then one of my favorites from my friend who uses a wheelchair is, how many speeding tickets have you gotten in that thing? Referring to her wheelchair. So let's think about this and just process this for a moment, and just recognize that as a collective group that you guys are so much further ahead than this. And so you guys are already doing this, and that's what I want to encourage you all, is that this is good customer service of treating kids and individuals just like you would treat everybody else. And that's what our families have said that they really want, is that they want to be treated, they want to have the same experiences. And so what we're trying to do is provide you with the tools that you can use in order to help them have these experiences. So what I'm going to do next is go through just some different types of disabilities and focus on developmental disabilities, because that's really like where we come into play within the division that I work with. But you may see folks that have more physical or mobility disabilities. So for example, you may see some folks that are veterans and maybe have injuries from the war, and they have some type of physical disability now. You may see somebody who has a speech disability where they use some type of device to talk. You may see a sensory disability, like being deaf or being blind. And then the big category that I want to talk about is developmental disabilities. And that is just an umbrella term that we use for the disabilities that occur prior to the age of 22. So these are disabilities that people have for their whole lives. And they're diagnosed when the kids and the individuals are younger. And so it's a part of their development. So it'll impact some part of their development, whether that be speech or motor functioning or social skills or self-help skills. And these, I think, or what is tricky about these is that they may or may not be visible to other people. So if we take a look at this list here, the way that I kind of categorize these are the ones that I know that you guys will be seeing based on the populations that we have here kind of in our community and the folks that comprise our patient population at Children's and the people that are on our Family Advisory Council. So we can say definitely that you will see kids with autism, and just knowing the rates, this just came out last week actually, that it actually increased to 1 in 59 kids. So that means if you had 59 kids in this room, at least one of them would be diagnosed on the autism spectrum. So that keeps going up and up and up. We also have a very large Down syndrome population here in Cincinnati, spina bifida, cerebral palsy, intellectual disability, and then we also have some pretty rare genetic syndromes that we have really great care for here in Cincinnati. So our expectation is not that you leave here being an expert in all of these different disabilities, because I am not even an expert in all of these, because there's so many kind of characteristics that fall into these. But what we do want you guys to think about is what are the main characteristics that are across disabilities, and so things that you can be thinking about that you might need to be aware of as you interact with our population. So the thing that I want to mention really quickly is this idea of visible versus invisible disabilities, because to look at some people, you can say they have something going on. They have some type of disability. I can see that they look a little different. They have characteristics. So they might be using a wheelchair. They might have, a amputation. So you can physically see something. Then we have this whole other population that they might be invisible disabilities. And that's where autism really falls into this category, because to look at some of our populations, you wouldn't know that anything is going on until you interact with them. And so when we take a look at some of these, so these are all very cute pictures of kids who have a certain disability. Can anybody take a guess on what that is? Down syndrome, ding, ding, ding. So you can see that there's some characteristics there, like in their facial features, that kind of gives that away. Let's look at the next one. Does anybody have an idea of what this one is? Oh, it has the stupid sign up above it. I didn't even notice that. Shoot. Spina bifida, yes. How about this one? Cerebral palsy, yeah, great. How about this one? It's getting a little trickier. It is a syndrome, but not Williams syndrome. So this is Fragile X syndrome. So again, this is a little more subtle, but you can see some characteristics that are similar in these kids. And then how about this one? Does anybody have a guess on what diagnosis these individuals have? Any guesses?
Angelman.
Angelman syndrome? Any other guesses? This is kind of a trick question because you really can't tell. So all of these individuals on this picture have autism. And so to look at them, you wouldn't know from physical characteristics that they have any type of disability. And so they are more of an invisible disability. So you really have to start to interact with them and see some of the characteristics. You can't just look at them and say, I know exactly what's going on there. And that can be really tricky, especially in public places like the zoo, because they might start to act differently. And you're like, oh, that's a little bit different. I didn't expect that from them because they look like this. They look like a typical kid. So that's the reason why we bring up these pictures, is that you guys can see some of the differences, but then also some of the similarities that our population has. So what I want to do now is cover just a few of the challenges, because unfortunately this is the stuff that people feel uncomfortable about, and this is the stuff that can kind of get our population into trouble. And I can't start talking about our population without talking about all of the strengths that our population has. And I could go on for days and days and days talking about those strengths. And one of the things that we really want to emphasize on you all is the differences, across people. Just like we all have differences and we are all unique, our population is as well. So what I'm going to try to do is go over some of the characteristics that you might see. But this might be a little challenging because every person is different. And so when we think about just the uniqueness in people, what works for one person might not work for everybody. And that's really important to think about. I have teachers that I work with sometimes, and they'll say, oh, I had a kid with autism in my class last year. I know exactly what to do. And I'm like, oh crap, like you don't know anything to do. And that just showed it right there because of our kids being so different. And so I really want you guys to think about everybody being very unique. This is a continuum that we put together to just show kind of the different characteristics that all people have, not just with our population, but when we look at where people fall, like on this continuum, people are not going to go straight down a line. They're not going to fall neatly into a package and be all on the left side or all on the right side or all down the middle. They're going to bounce all over the place. So just because somebody has an intellectual disability doesn't mean that they're withdrawn, doesn't mean that they don't have any challenging behaviors. They ping pong kind of all over the place. So these are just characteristics that we want you guys to think about, that you might see some kids with some of the physical challenges, and so they might be using a wheelchair or a walker or a cane, and they might have poor endurance or poor balance, and so you might see them getting tired easily. I know myself walking around the Cincinnati Zoo, sometimes I get tired because of all of the inclines. So think about that from our population, is that sometimes they might have some of these challenges as well. They also might have communication difficulties, and this can be really tricky if you haven't worked with our population before, because you may talk to somebody and they might not respond back to you. They might act like they are not able to hear you, they might not answer questions. They might not be able to ask for help or ask for something that they need. They might not be able to ask or answer questions about making choices. And they also might repeat back things that you say, which can be a little startling at first because it's like a little parrot, that they're repeating back exactly what you say. But what I will say is that a lot of our kids understand a lot more than what they're able to say. And so they're taking it all in. And that's the reason why we really emphasize, just like we would everybody else, talking to them and engaging with them just like you would any other child, is that they're taking that all in. So some things that we think about for communication, just keeping things very simple, speaking as slowly as possible and allowing extra time, being able to be as specific as you can, and being able to listen and allow them to repeat you, and then using some of those visual supports. So as we start to develop those, we will come around the park and we'll be working with the individual groups on how to teach you guys how to use those as well. One of the things that I want to make sure that you guys really know as well is to think about not talking to their caregivers. So really talking to them, I talked about that before, but then also to make sure that we don't use very abstract language, and I am really bad about this because sometimes I need to be more specific, and I tend to joke a lot. And I have said, you are such a rock star, to a kid, and he was like, I'm not a rock star, my name is Johnny. And like so mad at me because I called him a rock star, because he took that very literally. And so some kids, you might say something and they're like, meh, like I didn't say that, or I don't understand, those sort of things. So just make sure that you kind of think about that. The other thing that we want to talk about really quickly is things that you might see in the park with kids who have some type of speech or communication challenges. So some of them might have devices with them, so they might have an iPad, they might have their phone, they might have some other type of device, and that's their words, and so they're using that to communicate. We also have kids that use something called a Picture Exchange Communication System, PECS, and it's a little book and that they carry around with them, and it has pictures on it that they exchange for what they want. And so instead of them asking for a chance to see or to go see the cheetahs, they might have a card that has the cheetah and they exchange that and they give that to their caregiver or their teacher. So you might see some of those things, so just know that as you see those things throughout the park. Here's some pictures of some of the devices that you might see as well, and you'll see a lot of them have pretty handy-dandy cases that are pretty indestructible because our kids, can be a little rough on things. Another thing that I want to emphasize with you guys is just some difficulty with change and having a hard time with transitions and moving from one thing to the next, and if something is unexpected. So if they are coming to the zoo and they eat a blueberry frosted Pop-Tart for breakfast every morning, and they go to eat that Pop-Tart and the box is empty, that could set them up for the whole rest of the day. And so it might not have anything to do with you. It might be something that happened before that was unexpected. And so a lot of times what we try to do is prepare them for new experiences. And that's where all those visual supports with the story that we'll have online and all of the pictures and the schedules, that will help them with those. So we just try to be as predictable and provide as much structure as we can to prepare them. And then one of the things that I want to just say really quickly about this is that you might see some kids that have repetitive body movements, and so some of our kids do like hand flapping, for example, or they might rock their bodies, or they might jump up and down. They might just do some things with their body that seems a little weird, and that is what they are doing to just have their body under control. So I could pick on you, and I could come over here, and I could put my leg or put my hand on your leg, and what would you do if I did that? Probably wouldn't like it, yes. So if we did that to one of our kids, they probably wouldn't like it. And so I know you guys don't touch kids, when they come anyway, but just so you guys know that it's not something that is to be afraid of, it's just something that they are kind of calming their bodies and doing that to kind of stay in the moment and pay attention. We might see some social deficits as well, so they might not be aware of how they act in certain situations. They might have a hard time understanding kind of the unwritten rules of social interactions. So there's a lot of men in the room today, which makes me very happy because usually I don't have this many men in trainings. But I'll ask a question. So if you guys go to the men's restroom and there's a line of urinals and there is a gentleman at the first urinal, which urinal are you going to go to?
3 or 4. Skip one.
3 or 4, at least, right? You're not going to go to number 2, but some of our kids will walk in, they will walk right up to urinal number 2, and they will drop their pants all the way down. They will start chit-chatting with the person next to them, totally breaking like all man code, and because they have these social deficits. So just keep that in mind, that you might see some things where it's like, that's really strange. Like that is really unexpected behavior that I don't really know where that is coming from. And that's a part of some of these disabilities of not having the social awareness to know how to act in certain places. So one of the things that we can do to help this is to be very patient and be very consistent, stay very positive and flexible, and to stay calm. And then to also be aware of some of the sensory needs. Some of the sensory, Rhiannon likes to make fun of my Appalachian accent. She thought I was saying century when I was saying sensory for a long time. And I think it's important to talk about what sensory means. And so when we think about all of the stuff that is happening around the zoo, what are some things that might be a hard thing for our kids to deal with from a sensory? Smell, yep. Making noises.
Transitions of different substrate.
Transitions of different terrain.
Large
crowds, heat. Like all of these things are going to have an impact on our kids, which is one of the reasons why we're doing that map, to be able to identify where are the places in the zoo that you're most likely to experience some of these sounds, some of these smells, some of these crowds, all of those things.
What is vestibular?
So vestibular, thank you for asking that. Vestibular is more kind of like our body in space, so kind of our balance. So some of our kids really like to spin around in circles, and you're like, how in the world are you still spinning around in a circle? Like I would vomit, like a long time ago if I were doing that. Some other kids really like to like crash into things. So you might see them like running as hard as they can and like crashing into like a mat or falling down on the ground because that feels good to them. So that's more of kind of that body awareness. Yeah, great questions. So I'm going to show this video to give you guys a little snippet in what it could be like for our population when it comes to our sensory experiences.
Just wait there 1 minute, I'm just going to get a ticket, okay? Just breathe. That's it, just keep breathing, calming down. Okay. Okay, see everything's fine now? Yeah? Right, let's go home.
I'm not naughty. I'm autistic. And I just get too much information.
What stood out to you guys in this video? The breathing? Yeah, how helpless, kind of stuck. Anything else?
Overwhelming.
Yeah, overwhelming. One of the reasons I like this particular video is because it shows it from his perspective, and during that time, he was not able to pay attention to what his mom was saying. And so I think about that from our kids' perspective of being in a place, like a public place like the zoo, and how that can happen where they have people that are trying to talk to them and to try to give instructions, and they are hearing and experiencing all of this stuff around them. And so they might not be tuned in to what's happening because they are so stuck on some of those sensory aspects of things. So just kind of keep that in mind, and some of the things that we are going to be putting in place, like the sensory kits and the visual supports, that is all designed to help with stuff like this, to help them feel a little more in control and supported in their visits. So we have a few more things to talk about before we get to the scenarios, and I talked about this a little bit with the body movements that we see, but we have a lot of kids that are very, very active, and that is one of the biggest concerns that I think their families have, especially when they come somewhere like the zoo, is that possibility of wandering and leaving the situation. And part of that is because they are so active and they like to be out and about. So that's something that you will definitely see. Another thing that we feel like we have to bring up when we do these types of trainings is some of the behaviors that you might see. And again, I want to emphasize that these are not something that we expect you guys to jump in there and to manage these behaviors. This is just so you guys know a little bit more about where these behaviors might be coming from. And so the way that we think about behavior is it's a form of communication. So a lot of our kids can't communicate verbally or can't do that very well, and so they're going to use their bodies to communicate. They're going to use their behaviors to communicate to get what they want. So this might not be something that they deliberately do. This could be in response to something. It could be in response to being in A place at the zoo that is super loud and super crowded and super hot and oh my gosh, I gotta get out of here. And so they might bolt away. So that is something that we have to think about from that sensory regulation standpoint as well. So these are all contributors that lead to some of these behaviors, and I'm not going to go through all of them because we've talked about most of them already when we talked about some of the challenges associated with our population. But just so you guys know, these behaviors don't come out of nowhere. They always have a reason. And one of the things that we have to think about is how we contribute to things, and these are all things that, again, I do literally on a daily basis, where I am inconsistent and I am disorganized and I maybe misinterpret something that the person does. Sometimes when we have too much downtime, our kids will get into trouble and they will find something to do. And then we can also be very stressed around our kids. And so one of the things that we want to really emphasize to you guys is how to stay calm and relaxed in these situations, because our kids and individuals pick up on when we are stressed. So really thinking about it, how we contribute. And this is back to Psychology 101, so I'm not going to go through this in a lot of detail, but just thinking about how behavior works and what happens before a behavior, what happens after behavior, and how reinforcement works, that we continue to do stuff that we get rewarded and reinforced for. So same things with the kids that we work with. It's working for them, and that's why they keep on doing it. And so one of the reasons that we have to think about this is we have to know why the behavior is happening to know what to do about it. So I'm not going to go into this a lot, but I just want you guys to have some understanding of every behavior that we do. This is not just for kids, this is for all of us. Every behavior that we do serves a certain reason. So I'll take a few from the crowd. Why did you guys come to this training today? Required, right? Okay. So you are trying to escape getting in trouble, right? Or getting the wrath of Rhiannon or whoever else your people might be. Did anybody come because they are trying to get out of doing something else? Nope, okay. Did anybody come because they are getting paid for it? You can have true answers, that's fine. So tangible, you're getting something. How about, did anybody come because they knew somebody was going to be here and they really just wanted to hang out with that other person? You laugh, but I teach college, and I get a lot of college kids that will say, yeah, that's why I came to class this morning. So we have to find the reason that our kids do stuff. So it's either because of a medical reason, that they might not feel good, they're trying to communicate that they have a headache or a stomach ache. It might be that they're trying to escape something. It might be that they're trying to get attention. It might be that they're trying to get stuff. So it might be that they're trying to see their favorite animal or do their favorite activity at the zoo. We also do things because it feels good, like that sensory piece that I mentioned before. So I'm going to go through this really quickly because this is not going to pertain as much to you guys, but I think it's important to think about where we kind of live within a behavior kind of cycle. Is we want to kind of live in these green moments here. So we want to have as many teachable moments as we can. And once our kids and individuals start rumbling, then we can still do some things, but then when they get into this rage kind of cycle, that is where we expect you guys to just kind of bow out and be like, I'm out, I'm not doing anything, this is not, kind of where I come into play, because this is not where you guys are trained to manage these types of behaviors, but we want to just have these as resources for you guys to be able to think about where the kids and families might be in this cycle so you know how to help. So when you see a kid starting to have some of these warning signals, what are some of the things that you can do? You can start to, stay calm, use that quiet voice, take deep breaths, think about what it is that you're trying to accomplish. You guys can be very flexible here at the zoo. You don't have to necessarily do things like in a certain order or anything like that. You can kind of be flexible. And then a lot of times just distraction, talking about something else can be really helpful, getting them back on the routine, just offering a break. That calming space is gonna be huge for you guys, and to just have like some self-calming. So that's kind of where we want you guys to live. This other rage stuff, I'm gonna talk more from the standpoint with like the education staff, when they are seeing some of these behaviors kind of in their classrooms, what to do. And then also to recognize that our kids don't like to do these things, that this is a hard time for them and they will need time to recover. So they might be kind of fragile, and so they need time to kind of recover and just kind of do their thing. And so giving them that time to recover. And what's being passed around to you guys is a little cheat sheet with those functions, those 5 things that I mentioned before. That's the reason why we do behaviors. So again, we don't expect you guys to be experts in this, but this is just for a resource. So you can say, I wonder why this kid might be doing this. Is it because they're trying to get a reaction from me? Is it because they're trying to do their favorite game? Is it because they're hungry and trying to get food? All of those things can be helpful in trying to figure out. So one of the things that we're going to do now is try to get you guys into some groups based on who you work with here, and think about scenarios that you might see. And